Welcome to my garden. The weather is getting warmer and more flowers start to appear in the garden. They attract all kinds of insects, and those insects attract birds. The great tits are searching for food to feed their young. Now there's no risk of frost anymore. It is time to plant the annuals that I sowed into the garden. I'm adding a variety of cosmos called Cupcake's Blush, a pale pink variety with flowers shaped as a cupcake. I'm also adding snapdragons. As a fluffy filler, I'm going to plant Dill and Emmy. Before I start planting, I'm placing all my plants on the soil. This gives me an idea of what it will look like and if they're spaced out the way I want them to be. The color scheme of this small border is soft pinks with lavender blues of the nepetas and yellow greens of the Eucamilla mollis. The main plants in this border are pink roses. As they do not flower continuously, I'm adding soft pink cosmos as a replacement. I will leave the plants for a while and come back later to have a fresh look, and if I'm happy with where they are, I will start planting. The geraniums have finished flowering, so now it's time to cut them back right to the ground, so that I have more space to plant my annuals. It seems quite harsh, but new growth will appear very quickly. I've bought a new bird feeder that keeps the jackdaws out. Well, at least that is the idea. They still manage to get some seeds, but at least the smaller birds have a chance to. And they really seem to like it. I was afraid that they would be scared to go into the cage, but they do not seem to mind at all. This young of the great tit is still begging for food, while it can easily feed itself. The parents are still happy to feed him. The bumblebees are enjoying the nectar of the foxgloves. I'm going to add some dahlias to the border at the back of my garden. The idea is that these dahlias will take over when the roses have finished flowering and provide color all summer long well into the autumn. Like with the annuals, I'm placing all my dahlias on the soil first. I'm also adding some cupcakes in the corner. Just a few changes and I think I'm ready to start planting. While I get my shovel, I will leave you with a few images of my David Austin roses. Cosmos will flower better in poor soil, so I'm not adding any compost when I plant them. These are healthy looking plants with a good root system. Just pop it in, backfill with soil and gently firm it in. The nepeta is finally flowering, but it doesn't look very well. It has a fungal disease called powdery mildew, and because of that the leaves in the center all died back. I've never had powdery mildew in my nepetas before, but the ones in the garden have it too, so maybe it's because of the cold spring we've had, I don't know. So I'm going to take it out of the pot and plant it into the garden, and I'm going to replace it with this agapanthus. It is a blue variety as well, so I think that would look really nice here. I'm adding the nepeta to my soft pink border. I love the combination of soft pinks and lavender blues. I'm teasing the roots to stimulate new growth, but also to stimulate it to grow out into the soil. The soil in this border is very poor and dry, so it should be perfect for nepetas. Although nepetas love dry soil, I'll give it a good watering after planting, and I'm also watering the cosmos and other annuals that I planted. My garden isn't looking as good as previous years, probably due to last year's drought and this year's cold and wet weather. I do not have as many foxgloves this year, and my nepetas are struggling and the roses aren't as abundant as previous years. My first cupcakes cosmos started flowering. I think it's very pretty. It is so important to add water for wildlife in your garden, even if it's very small like this terracotta dish. The birds seem to love it. Let's add some more dahlias to the garden. For this border I've made a selection of apricot tones to replace my apricot colored roses. Check out my dahlia video that I shared a few weeks ago to see how I plant them and which varieties I've chosen. Before I'm going to plant my dahlias, I take a break to enjoy a cup of tea and have a look at the garden. It is so lovely to sit outside in the sun surrounded by plants. Time to get the dahlias in the soil. These are quite big plants, so I'm digging a deep hole. Carefully take the plant out of the pot. And pop it in the hole. Backfill with soil and firm it in. I'm also labeling it so that when I have to lift them in autumn, I know exactly which variety it is. By placing the pot in the hole, I'm checking if I'm at the right depth. It needs to be a little bit deeper. So now it will be fine. Now that the geranium has been cut back, there is space to plant another cupcake cosmos. As you can see, I planted next to a rose as a replacement when the rose isn't in flower. In this corner I'm adding some more apricot dahlias, a water lily variety called Garden Jubilee. Dahlias can be quite tricky when it comes to watering. The tubers can rot easily when they sit in wet soil, but they do need watering after planting. On both sides of the path I have white roses growing, except for this part here in the front, Now when I designed this garden, I had this idea in my mind of a beautiful blue cloud of lavender softening the edges. But as you can see, that didn't quite work that well. It is simply too wet during winter here for lavender. So as a quick and cheap alternative for white roses, I have sown these white cosmos that I'm going to add here. And I'm also going to add these white alyssums. Now alyssums are quite an old-fashioned bedding plant, but I do hope that they will cover the soil and soften the edges as a beautiful white cloud. So let's start planting to find out. So when I start, I'm just placing all the plants here on the soil. And then finally, when I'm happy with the design, I'm going to plant them into the soil. The cosmos that I'm planting is a variety called vegde. It will grow 60 centimeters tall and has large white flowers. It was a lot of work to sow, grow and plant all my annuals and dahlias, but well worth it. Every morning when I walk through the garden, there is the excitement of hoping to see new flowers, especially the new varieties that I haven't grown before. To find out if the planting combinations work and even make plans for next year to improve. I hope that you've enjoyed this video. Thank you ever so much for watching. See you next time. We had a cold spring and now they've all had an airplane. So it is simply to... Het slaat nergens op. Beautiful blue cloud, there's a car. Great, always nice. And there's a plane as well. How cozy. So let's start, never mind, it's too noisy. On both sides of the path I have white roses growing. En toen wist ik het niet meer. Mind of a beautiful blue cloud softening the edges. That wasn't good. Now alyssums are quite an old-fashioned bedding plants, but I hope that they will... Bleh. There's a car and there's music and there's a lot of noise. So let's start planting to find out. And there is a plane. It is simply too wet during our winters. Hey bee. It is simply too wet for lavender here in our garden. Now alyssums are quite a... It is simply too wet for lavender to grow here in... Noisy, noisy. Noisy, noisy. Ah, there's a plane. And a car. There's noise. I haven't decided which cosmos to plant. These bigger ones.